Chapter 1. Rhila was so much exhausted after the birthday party that she just wanted to lay down and rest. She dropped on her bed to get her much-anticipated rest when a sudden noise downstairs startled her. Rhila was sure all the servants had retired for the night. Rhila got out of bed and stealthily made her way out of her room. She suddenly felt her hair rise as she waked down the stairs in the dim, flickering lights. She could hear voices coming from her father's study. She felt a little relief, knowing that her father must be on a call with one of the guests that had attended her birthday party. Getting closer to the room, she peeped through the slightly open door when she watched in horror at what was happening. She tightly held her mouth to prevent herself from screaming. Her father had been held at gunpoint and was kneeling down, his hands at the back of his head. Her father caught sight of her and motioned her to get away from there, but all the energy had drained from her body, and she slumbered to the floor. "We don't have to do this," one of the masked men said. "I promise, I'm telling you the truth. I don't have it. I already sent it to the president," Josen said, his body soaked in sweat. "We warned you a long time ago, yet you thought that we were bluffing. You continue sniffing your nose where it doesn't concern you," the other guy said, and made a signal. Another guy stormed out of the room. Rhila felt footsteps coming her way and tried to get up but failed miserably, her body shaking all over. She was caught and dragged into the room to join her father. "Don't bring her into this. Please let my daughter go," Josen begged tearfully. "Father, what is happening? Why are these people holding a gun at you?" Rhila asked, shaking all over. "It is okay, my daughter. Everything will be all right," Josen replied, trying to reach his daughter, but he was kicked back to his position, blood oozing out of his mouth. "The disc, or I'll blow her head off," a voice warned from behind them. The guy got up and stood behind Josen. "Please, sir, let my daughter go. She got nothing to do with this. It is me that you want. I promise to do whatever I can to retrieve the disc and bring it to you," Josen pleaded, his heart breaking in 1,000 pieces as he watched the tears in his daughter's eyes. The next second, Rhila dropped down on the floor like a sack of potatoes. She had been hit pretty hard on the head. "Rhila!" Josen cried, but a bullet went through his head and he dropped dead, lying in a pool of his own blood. The other guys could not believe what just happened. They were supposed to scare him, but not kill him. Worst, they hadn't retrieved what they had come for. "Why did you do that? That wasn't the plan," Zach said, pacing about in the room. Police sirens could be heard close by. The group immediately made their escape through the tunnel they had dug. Rhila was losing consciousness, but the image of her father, lying lifeless in a pool of his blood, could not let her close her eyes. "Father, get up," Rhila cried in her voice that was barely audible. She tried to reach him, but the pain at the back of her head was so unbearable. She had helplessly watched that man pull the trigger till her dad dropped dead. Tears of agony streamed down her face as she lay there helplessly. Minutes later, she heard footsteps getting into the room. She saw something bright light up in her face, and voices that she could barely make out get closer and closer as she slowly crept into the world of darkness. Few meters away from the mansion in the woods, 5 guys emerged from a tunnel and took off their face masks. "Why did you do it, Don? Your brother specifically ordered that we just scare him, not to murder him," Zach asked angrily. "I don't owe any of you an explanation. You should report back to my brother," Don replied, and spat to the ground. A smirk formed on his face as he moved away. This was just the beginning. "This is not good, men. We can't tell Yuri that we didn't retrieve the discs. Worse still, that Josen is dead," Ras said as he sat dejectedly to the ground. He could not imagine the wrath of the beast if things didn't go as planned. "I can't have my head on a platter tonight," Stan said, and followed after Dawn. 2 more guys followed after them. "I guess it's time to choose sides. Ras, are you coming with me?" Zach asked as he held out his hand to him. "If we die tonight, it would be our fate," Ras replied, and took Zach's hand to get up. The 2 then followed after the 4. The drive back was the longest that Ras and Zach ever experienced. In the next few minutes, their fate would be sealed. At last, they arrived after 6 hours of drive. It was pitch dark inside the forest as they alighted. Their vision wasn't affected one bit. Being vampires, they had hunted in the dark for the better part of their lives. Recently, that they ventured into the light after inventing medicine that enabled them stay in the light. They alighted out of the car, which was immediately driven out of the forest by a guy who had been on standby. The 5 got into another van as they drove through the vast estate. Yuri had been waiting for them to arrive. He had been fuming mad since he received news that Josen had been killed, but after the hours passed, his anger had subsided. He, however, couldn't wait for the guys to arrive. "Why did you guys fuck up the operation?" Yuri asked, immediately. The guys alighted from the van right in front of the mansion. The guys standing with Dawn didn't dare to reply. "All right, give it to me," Yuri said, and extended his arm towards his brother. "Just who do you think you are, brother? You order everyone around you like dogs. For once, do things by yourself. We won't be doing all the dirty work for you," Dawn said, and spat to the ground. He then brushed past Yuri after he dropped down the gun in front of him. Stan and Rex followed after him. Yuri watched in anger as Dawn walked away, followed by his men. "You 2 get out of my sight," Yuri barked angrily at Ras and Zach, who had stayed behind. Chapter 2. 5 days later, at one of the country's top hospitals, Rhila, who had been unconscious, began to slowly open her eyes. It took her a few seconds to get accustomed to the light at the room. Rhila had wanted to get up, but a throbbing pain in the head attacked her, that she screamed in pain, lying back on the bed. She glanced around and realized that she was at the hospital. She called for her father, but there was no one at the room. Memories from before began flooding her brain, and she began screaming. "Father, Father, please don't leave me." She began taking off the tubes attached to her when a nurse went in to hold her down, begging her to stay calm. At the same time, a doctor walked in and sedated her. She might cause injuries to herself when her wound was beginning to dry up. "Call her family and tell them that the patient is awake," the doctor directed, and observed Rhila. Within a few seconds, George, his wife Melia, and Tilda, their daughter, made their way to the hospital. At the entrance, the news reporters who had camped there immediately surrounded their car after identifying them. "You 2 go on, I'll talk to them," George said, and got out of the car while the 2 headed inside. "I'm grateful that you are concerned about my niece's health, but I can assure you that she is responding well to treatment. In fact, the doctor just called to inform us that she just woke up. Right now, I would request that you give us space during this difficult time. My assistant here will answer all the questions you might have," George said, and walked in, the journalists giving way to him. The next second, they had surrounded Mike, asking dozens of questions. Inside Rheela's room, Melia and Tilda just arrived. Rhila was still asleep. The nurse explained for them to wait a few minutes before she woke up. "Do I have to be here? Mother, you know that I don't like hospitals," Tilda began. "For once, Tilda, why don't you behave like a grown-up? Rhila is your cousin, and you should support her during this time," Melia said to her daughter with a stern expression on her face. We are not even friends, and you want me to pretend like I care for her. Mother, you know that isn't me," Tilda replied, and stood by the window glancing out. She didn't like it when her mother showed concern for Rhila. Her mother would at times be gone the entire day when they were supposed to be spending time together, especially since the holidays were coming to an end and she would return to school the next week. "Please, Tilda, could you put yourself in her shoes? What if it was you who lost your parents? I'm sure she would be there for you," Melia said. Rhila stirred in bed and stared into space. She could not get the memories out of her head. She had hoped that all that was just a dream, but hearing those people talk, she realized that all was lost. "Rhila, you are finally awake. How are you feeling?" Melia asked as she sat beside her in bed. Rhila could not bring herself to answer to her question. Only tears began to stream down her face. Melia's heart broke at the sight. He wiped off Rhyla's tears as she hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry, dear, but time will heal all the wounds. I'm here for you," Melia said, and let Rhila cry on her shoulders. Tilda watched in disinterest at the two. She could only put up with her for a few seconds. She would never allow her into their family. Otherwise, she would make her life a living hell. Rhila had been living a princess life, while her family only survived by working their arse off for her father. George entered the room, and Melia broke away for the embrace. He went closer to her and held her hands. George could see that she had been crying, but that wasn't his concerns right now. "I'm sorry, dear. Know that I'm here for everything you need. I'm also your father, so please calm down," George said. He wasn't good at consoling someone, but he tried, considering it wasn't from his heart. Rhila only nodded at him and turned her head to face the wall. That was a lot to process. She was yet to come to terms with her father's death, and those people already behaved as though they had an idea of what she was going through. "Melia, Tilda, please, stay here with Rhila for a while. I just need to get some things done," George said, slightly patting his wife's back, and went out of the room. "I want to see my father," Rhila said abruptly. "But, dear, I don't know whether that's possible. Let me talk to the doctor first," Melia said, and got up. It was now Tilda and Rhila in the room. "I'm sorry, Rhila, for what happened with your dad, but you have to pull yourself together. I don't want you to become a burden to my family. We all have things to do, and you are not so special," Tilda said. Rhila just looked up at her emotionless. Though Tilda's words pierced into her soul, it could not match up to what she felt. She was, now, all alone. Everything had no meaning in her life once more. First, it was her mother. Now, her father was gone too. Tilda was right. She should not trouble anyone with her sorrows. Rhila wiped off the tears from her face and stared into space. Her mind went back to the night when it all happened, changing the course of her life. That night had been the happiest and the saddest day of her life. She went back to the moment that person had pulled the trigger on her father's head. She had ensured to have the person's image imprinted on her mind, never for once letting it escape her mind. She had to make him pay. Chapter 3. Deep in the forest. Yuri was getting ready to leave. He had known for a while that his brother wanted to take over his position, and that was why he had gone against his order. Right now, he had to stop Dawn before he could do something stupid. He had just put on his black leather jacket when Jade walked in. "Love, I had no idea that you were planning to leave," Jade said. She just came out of the bathroom after a quick shower. The two just had a heated session after staying apart for too long. "There are things I need to take care of personally," Yuri replied, "Can I come with you, please? You know that I won't be a hindrance to you," Jade said. She just got back and had planned to spend quality time with him. "If you insist, then get ready. I'm heading out in a few minutes," Yuri said, and kissed her on the forehead. The two had been together for close to 50 years now, and they hadn't gotten tired of each other. It even seemed as though they were new lovers. Jade hurriedly got herself dressed up and followed after him in the car. The day had arrived when Josen would be laid to rest. Various dignitaries were in attendance. The president too had attended the funeral service. Josen was the country's Minister of Security, having worked in the government for now 9 years. Everyone had settled when Rhila was led into the arena on her wheelchair. A white bandage was wrapped around her head, which reminded everyone of the ordeal her family had gone through. Till now, the perpetrators hadn't been found. Only their escape van had been discovered abandoned at the outskirts of the city. The dignitaries present offered their condolences to Rhila, promising to do everything in their power to have the perpetrators brought to book. The president himself offered to personally go after those who had killed his most trusted minister. The session began with various people giving their speeches. When it was Rhila's turn to speak, she found that she had been unable to utter a single word. Painful emotions had filled her heart that she would break down if she began to speak. Melia decided to speak on her behalf. The procession then headed to the cemetery where her father would be buried. It was right next to where her mother had been buried early in the year. The flowers they had brought on her father's birthday were already withered away. Rhila didn't know that in just a week's time she would return to the same spot to place flowers on her father's grave. As her father was being laid to rest, Rhila glanced around at the gloomy expressions of everyone. You might think that it was them that had lost someone important to them, when in fact those who were responsible for her father's death might be among the crowd. She scanned everyone when her eyes spotted 2 guys behind a tree. They looked suspicious, but they were not the guys she was looking for. However, Rhila felt that she might find a clue there at her father's funeral. "You see, she didn't recognize us. I'm sure she could have alerted the police and we got arrested," Timon said. "Why don't we just do away with her to spare ourselves from any more trouble?" Stan said. "Relax, men. She is just a 17-year-old. How long have you lived? 300 years or more? You know that in the next 50 years she would be no more. Let's just leave her alone, as long as she won't cause any troubles for us," Timon said. Though they had killed a lot of humans, this girl seemed really helpless, and killing her won't be fun. "Did you hear that?" Jade asked over the phone in a whisper. "Of course I did. I knew Don would not let her alone. That was why I had to go here," Yuri replied. "What will you do then?" Jade asked. "Enough with the questions, Jade. Focus on the task I gave you," Yuri replied, and cut off the line. His eyes were fixed on the lifeless body of Rhila, seating on a wheelchair. He regretted ever sending his brother to warn her dad. He should have done this alone, and prevented this disaster. But now he had to protect her. Rhila, who just returned from laying flowers on her father's grave, felt a burning stare at her. She looked up and was met with a pair of blue eyes staring at her. Rhila recalled that she had seen him once with her father discussing in his study. But why did he hide behind that tree? Was he hiding from someone? Did he have something to do with her father's death? However, Rhila brushed those thoughts aside. The guy looked so handsome to kill someone. Jade, on the other hand, noticed Yuri staring at the girl for too long. As far as she knew him, Yuri would never waste any time with someone, especially a weak human. But here, it seemed as though the girl had captured his heart. Jade hoped that he would not try anything stupid with that human, else he would be the cause of her death. Jade became thankful that she had tagged along, otherwise she would not have witnessed this. At the kingdom, almost everyone had made fun of her. They had been together for years, but he hadn't made her his queen yet, adding to the suspicion she had. Maybe Yuri didn't truly love her and was waiting for his queen. Everyone had departed, and it was only Rhila remaining. The weather suddenly became freezing, and it was threatening to rain. Rhila didn't care a thing. Leaving her father all alone in that place was something she could not come to terms with. How would she live without him? "Dear, let's go now. It's about to rain. You could go back here whenever you want to," Melia said. Rhila did not respond, but only nodded at her. Melia wheeled her back to the car. Rhila wasn't allowed to walk, as she experienced dizziness whenever she tried walking. In the next instant, they drove off, Yuri watching from behind the trees as they sped off. Chapter 4. The car finally came to a stop in front of a huge mansion. All through the drive, everyone remained quiet. Tilda, on the other hand, hadn't spoken a word, but constantly browsing on the internet as she chewed gum non-stop. The driver helped Rhila down while Melia wheeled her into the house. "This will be your new home for now," Melia said to Rhila. "I know this is all new and strange, and that you would rather stay back at your home, but it had been sealed off while the investigations are still going on. We are our legal custodians till you reach the age of 18 years, after which you could decide for yourself," Melia explained. That much Rhila knew already. It was just 6 more months till she became of age. Rhila quietly watched the house as they went inside. It was so beautiful and elegantly decorated that she wondered why they always went to her father for help. As far as she knew, Uncle George had been the director at one of her father's companies, which registered losses countless times. Now she saw why her father never trusted his brother. But what could he do? George was his only family left. His father would always give in to his requests. "Let us eat something before you go in and rest. The nurse will be here later to check your wound," Melia said, with a lot of concern. She wanted to take care of Rhila, just like her mother did. Melia especially owed a big favor to Maya for having enabled her get a baby when she had been unable to get pregnant. That was a story for another day, and she pushed it out of her mind. At the table, Rhila watched as everyone ate to their fill. She, however, felt like throwing up, but she could not excuse herself. She didn't want to appear rude when they had offered to help her. She picked sausages from the plate and bit it slowly till she completed it. No one seemed to mind her eating. She was finally led to her room on the first floor. Melia had the servants help her up the stairs till she got to bed. Rhila lay there quietly on the bed, staring into space. Her mind was totally blank, but due to the exhaustion she had, it didn't take long till she fell into a deep slumber. In the middle of the night, Rhila had a dream that her mother was there with her to console her. She held unto her tightly, not letting go. She would not let her out of her life once more. Her mother tried to break off, but she held tightly. "Mother, don't go, please. Don't leave me alone. I don't want to be alone anymore." "Mother," Rhila cried in her sleep. Maya felt her world crumbling down when her daughter cried and begged her not to leave her, but she knew she could not stay any longer. It was too risky for her. Maya soothed her till she went back to sleep. That had been so close. Rhila was waking up, and she could have caught her. Maya put on her black hood and stealthily made her way out of the room and out of the huge mansion. She got back to the car and released a long breath, she had been holding for a long time now. "What took you so long? Don't you know how risky that was?" Mickey asked, pissed off. "I'm so sorry, Mickey, but Rhila almost woke up. I had to put her back to sleep," Maya explained. "I think we agreed that you would only take a glimpse at her, but you went out to hold her and kiss her all over. I'm not doing this anytime soon," Mickey said angrily and drove off. He knew that Rhila was probably being watched by those who killed her father, and Maya too, her life was in danger. If anyone found out that she was alive, they would not hesitate to kill her once more. "Thank you so much, Mickey. I don't know what I would have done without you," Maya said. Mickey had been her only strength, and the shoulder she could lean on during the difficult period. 6 months ago, she had been involved in a fatal accident that left her dead as far as the people knew. Maya actually didn't know what happened, but Mickey said that he found her few meters away from the car after it had blown up. She still could not understand how she survived, but she was sure she would get the answers soon, only that she hadn't retrieved all her memories. "Just don't put your life at risk anymore. The person who wanted you dead might spot you any time," Mickey said, and stepped on the gas. It was few minutes past midnight. Outside Arizona town, a factory had caught fire in the middle of the night. Immediately, a phone call was made, and Yuri rushed to the site. He had spent his night in town after the funeral. When he got there, everything was up in flames, and no matter what they did, nothing could be saved. Yuri and Jade stood at a distance as they watched everything get consumed by the flame. Yuri's oil company base, worth billions of dollars, got destroyed just like that. Yuri already knew that it wasn't a simple accident. He had founded his company 30 years ago, and not a single incident of fire had been reported. Yuri already knew who was behind it all, and he would return fire with fire. "Get in," Yuri said to Jade and drove off. He then made a phone call. Stan and his team arrived back at home. They went straight to Don's mansion to report their success. "I can't imagine the look in my brother's face when he sees all his hard work go up in flames," Don said, excited, as he held up his glass for a toast. "And you have officially started a war between the two of you," Stan said, as he gulped down the blood. "This calls for a celebration. Gather up, everyone. We leave in the next 1 hour," Don said, as he poured himself another glass of blood. He couldn't wait to get his brother off the leadership positions, and he would start by cutting off his resources.